All right, everybody, we are moving on to 2.8 with this video. It is on standard form. So go ahead, make sure that you have a pencil, paper out. You're ready to take your notes. And as always, go ahead, feel free to skip around this video and use what you need to. Our warm-up is 2x minus 4y equals 8. It says, what strategy would you use to graph this linear equation? And then it asks if you can think of another strategy. So go ahead, pause the video, think about an answer for this warm-up. I think that right now, what we know how to do with the skill set that we have, we would put this into slope-intercept form. So we would make this so that it looked like y equals mx plus b, right? We would basically want to solve for y. I think that's one way we would do it. I think another way that we could do it, or another strategy, is we could make a table, right? And in that table, we'll have x, we'll have y. We put a value in for x, we substitute it in, and then we would solve for the y so that we could get a bunch of different coordinate pairs. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the form that was in. This is called standard form. That is where you have ax plus by equals c. A, B, and C are all just numbers. Oh, if I can maybe write the word. Okay, there we go. Numbers. And those numbers are what's going to help us figure out what our slope, our y-intercepts, our x-intercepts, all these different things, okay? It says no fractions, very important. As always, we clear out fractions first. We don't like to keep those in. It also says A is positive, keep it positive. This is not as important. So it's not 100% that you need to keep A positive. If it is negative, you just have to be careful and use your negative rules. Okay, so as I was saying, one way that we could graph this kind of equation is that we would put it into slope-intercept form. So to do that, I would have to make it so that y is by itself. And this is where what we did in our first unit, our solving literal equations, comes in handy, because I want to just solve for the letter y, right? And so to do that, I need to move everything else away from it. In this case, I would have to subtract the 2x. When I do that, I would get y equals negative 2x plus 8. Now, what is way more important in this is that although you are subtracting the 2x on the end, you want to put it first. And that's so we can make sure that we don't get confused by what our slope is and what our y-intercept is, right? A lot of times we'll subtract the 2x and then we just think y equals mx plus b. We forget that the m actually has to have the variable on it, and we label our slope and our intercept flip-flopped. Okay, so we're going to make sure that we put x first, keep the same sign with it. So since I subtracted, it's a negative, it's still being subtracted. And then I have my slope as negative 2 and my intercept is 8, and I can graph that. The other thing we can do is find x and y intercepts to graph. So when I find my y-intercept, I've been using that one a lot, right? I know that my y-intercept is where I cross the y-axis, and I know when I cross the y-axis, my x equals 0. Well, the same is true for the x-intercept. The x-intercept is where we intercept, or, cross over the x-axis, and when we do that, our y is equal to 0, right? So if this is a graph that I have, this is my y, this is my x. Where I cross the x-axis, y is at 0, right? It's not up or down at all. Where I cross the y-axis, I'm sorry, I labeled those wrong. My bad. This is x and this is y. When I cross the x-axis, my y is 0. I just confused myself again. It's x and y. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm like all over the place here. I was saying the intercepts wrong. Anyways, where I cross the x-axis, y is 0. This would be an x-intercept right there, right? Because y is 0. Where I cross the y-axis, right here, the x is 0, because this is where my x's get bigger and smaller, right? Okay. Nevertheless, let's set up and how to find it without a graph. So if I'm looking for my x-intercept, this is where my y equals 0. Okay, so let's set this up. Negative 4x plus 2, and instead of y, now I'm using 0, equals negative 8. Well, I know 2 times 0 is nothing, so it basically just cancels out. And all I have is negative 4x equals negative 8. I'm going to divide by negative 4 to get x equals 2. So my x-intercept is 2, 0. Remember, these are always ordered pairs. I do the reverse when I'm solving for the y-intercept. This is when x equals 0. So there's another way to solve this. Instead of actually plugging in the zeros, I can kind of show how that I'm going to cross that out and just have 2y equals negative 8. The only reason I can do that is because anything times 0 is 0. And I divide by my 2, and y equals negative 4. So my y-intercept would be 0, negative 4. Pretty simple, right? We basically just cover up this to solve for the x, and I cover up this to solve for the y. So these are for our intercepts. We'll practice this a few times. So we're going to graph from standard form. Let's use our new skill of finding the intercepts to graph. So x-intercept, y equals 0, basically going to cover it up, and I have 2x equals 6. When I divide by 2, I get x equals 3. So my x is 3, my y is 0. Let's go ahead on the graph. Let's plot that. 3, 0. Oh, look at that, right where I crossed the x-axis. Okay, let's solve for our y-intercept. X equals 0, so I can basically cover that up. Negative 3y equals 6. I divide by negative 3. And I get y equals negative 2. So I have 0, negative 2 for my y-intercept. And I'm going to use my line tool to draw my line. And that's it. That's how you graph using intercepts. All right, let's do another one. This one, we can try to graph it by putting it in slope-intercept form. So let's start by subtracting 4x from both sides. Now I have 8y equals negative 4x plus 24. And then my last step is divide by 8. And this gives me that y equals negative 1 half x plus 3. So we go up 3 for our y-intercept, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. Negative slope, right? Or I could go up 1 and backwards 2. And we are going to put our line through all our points. And that's how we graph, by putting it into slope-intercept form. So which do you think is easier? Personally, I think finding the intercepts is a lot easier than putting it in slope-intercept form. There's a little bit more room for error here with your subtraction and your division. So in my opinion, I think it's always going to be easier to just find the intercepts. Next thing we have are vertical and horizontal lines. So we should have seen these before. We're going to practice them anyways. I have x is equal to 4. Right here it says that is a vux, a vertical undefined slope, and it always is written as an x equals. So I'm going to go where x is 4, and I'm going to draw my line. X equals 4. Then I have my y equals 6, and this says horizontal 0 slope y equals. So I'm going to go up to 6 and draw my horizontal line. So those are what those lines look like, right? X always equals 4, no matter what the y is. The y is here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my y's are changing, but my x never does. And vice versa with the horizontal. My x's are changing constantly, but my y is always 6. That is it for standard form today. Make sure that if you have any other questions, you reach out and ask one of your teachers or your actual teacher. That's it. Have a great rest of your day.